is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
And good morning, everybody. This is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. RedVoiceMedia.com is where you can find all the great, uncensored, second-hour stuff. And remember, that's pouring in free as well as paid. You can always listen on Podbean where we stream, and we really want to start taking more calls and getting your voice, but you got to want to participate. So we've got to grow that Podbean. Another great way to support the broadcast is by sharing those links with others. Now, I got a really interesting broadcast for us today. About 30 minutes into the broadcast, we're going to have investigative reporter and independent journalist Addy on to discuss his experience in Brazil, where he's investigating not only the questions about the elections, but the societal upheaval. And he put out a video, I think it was sometime last week, claiming to have an interaction with some kind of a Central Intelligence Agency spook that indeed did frighten him enough to leave Brazil. And I'll be honest with you, I've never traveled internationally anywhere, whether it would be South America or beyond, for a story. To me, that does make me a little nervous. I think my comfort zone is in this country. I know there are many people braver than I, and I thank those people, and that's one of the reasons we're going to have Addy on to discuss his experience, what he found while he was down there, and to get his opinion. Now, also, obviously, if you saw the title of this, Alex Jones finally, in my opinion, started going after Elon Musk in the proper format. I still think he has a long way to go, but he's essentially called him out as kind of the good cop, bad cop side to this fourth industrial revolution nightmare, okay, that's very real, that we all have to take into consideration. And, you have Klaus playing the Bond villain, like I've discussed, and then you've got Elon Musk as your Tony Stark savior, and neither one is good because it's a means to an end, okay? And you're getting sold on a PR figure in Elon Musk. That's what we're seeing here. So, second hour, I'm actually going to play this clip of AJ discussing it. And one of the things that Alex really needs to start discussing more, he talks about the lithium mines and the cobalt farms and the child labor and the connection to Elon Musk there. But if we're being fair, we have to talk about the defense contracts, and we have to talk about Starlink and Blackjack and SpaceX and what's happening in the Ukraine. To me, right now, at least, that's way more relevant because you're going to be able to reach more people with that because it's in the news cycle and they can understand and relate to why that is extending this conflict, empowering this conflict. And empowering what? Death showers from above via drones, via hooking up to Sidewinder and Ghosts. I mean, that's something to focus on. So we're going to play that clip, but at the same time, I want to show you the Elon PR machine, okay? And it is in full force. The richest man on earth is an effing trailer park simpleton. Now, Musk tweeted out this picture right here, okay? It's just my bedside table, then he's cracking jokes. There is no excuse for lack of coasters. So you got 4 empty Diet Coke cans. I think that's caffeine-free or something, Diet Coke. Some kind of a large sidearm, and a picture of Washington. Let's make it a little bigger for everybody. A picture of Washington, Revolutionary War, a little musket-type pistol. Yeah, I'm probably saying that totally wrong. Old school type pistol right there. Let me tell you something. If you believe that this is like what Musk goes to bed next to, give me a break. Come on. It's like the same story where they were telling you that Elon Musk was couch surfing. He was Kato Kalin. He doesn't have a residence. This is all carefully curated Johnny nonsense to sell you on Defense Department technology that has evolved behind the scenes over decades and is now being utilized in warfare and commercialized for us. He's the guy bringing us the human-like Optimus robots. He's the one that's allowed to put a brain chip in you via Neuralink. All right? He's the guy that's going to provide free internet for everybody while we go to the moon and Mars. When it's really a synthetic nano sensor interface system for the entire planet. Let me repeat that for you. A lot of people don't understand what Starlink really is. It is the Trojan horse civilian system for the powers that be, the Defense Department, the military industrial complex, to not only interact with traditional internet, but literally trillions of different types of sensors globally that will also include sensors that are inside your body, the Internet of Bodies, and interact with those in real time, track, trace, database them, and then in many cases be able to command and control them. Okay, we played the Internet of Bodies RAND clip yesterday, but in order to have that global interface system in case the web goes down, you have to have backdoors, and they do. Okay, and they do. So there's a few other stories that I want to hit, and then I want to play this video I did probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years ago. Time flies. Because I see Epstein Island trending, okay? And often when I see Epstein Island trending, I see a ton of disinformation and misinformation, and just, I think some of these people are genuine and they fall for it, such as fake client lists, right? Hashtag client list. And you see all these people that supposedly rode on Epstein's planes, and no, they didn't. Some of the people did, but it's mixed in with all these other names that is just Johnny nonsense. And then it discredits everything legitimate out there. And it also discredits kind of the way that this is a network and a model, okay? Intelligence communities, the military, they like regimented models, and they like regimented models that work. And they know that blackmail through sexual encounters works. It's a tried and true method. Time after time. Time after time. It has worked. So there's this piece about Claude Hadid, who is basically one of these model guys, right? Jean-Luc Brunel, Peter Nygaard. You have Epstein himself connected to Les Wexner. You have this circle of models to get access to young girls. And in this case, you were talking about 14 to 16-year-old girls here in the United States during the 70s and 80s when, there are no cell phones, there is no internet, the only access to another person is by mail or on the phone in real time, which is a total societal change, okay? And, it goes through how they would just kind of be pawned off on these rich and powerful men. And so this thing was exposed 30 years ago, more than that. I think this piece is like from 1988 to maybe 92. I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I went over it. That's why we're going to actually play the clip. But we'll only be able to play like the first half of that before Addy joins us. He's going to tell us what he was doing in Brazil, okay? And then in the second hour, which is premium only over at redvoicemedia.com, sign up /Jason. If you have signed up, go to /uncensored. That's where you're going to find it in real time. And then we'll finish up the second half of that clip. Before I get there, however, all right, this is a really big and important story to me because it shows you how far we've come where narrative management is the norm. Now, in China, what you're looking at here are two separate feeds. Okay, the top one is the Australian feed. The bottom one is the Chinese feed. All right, and these are World Cup feeds. So in China, they're not showing any crowd shots. Why are they not showing any crowd shots? Well, look, people aren't wearing masks, and that's against their great narrative of lockdowns. And a lot of people thought this was nonsense, but no, it's not nonsense. It's happening. And I know the big story is that AirDrop was taken off of iOS, and nobody seems to be covering the fact that tanks were rolling down the street in China on video just days ago. No big deal. But this is how authoritarianism and narrative control works, limiting your access to information, limiting your access to what the rest of the world is even seeing. And even in the States during, this whole COVID-19 84 nightmare, people generally had a different perception of what was going on if they stayed locally geographically. If you lived in New York or California, it was very different than if you were in Iowa or South Dakota. It's just a fact, Jack. It's just the truth, Ruth. Let's see. We almost got 200 people watching over on YouTube. Let's get the thumbs up. Remember, subscribe and share. One other story I want to hit before we go to this Epstein clip is this right here. Stewart Rhodes, convicted of seditious conspiracy. Now, I have met Stewart on several occasions, interviewed him back in the day when I was working with InfoWars. We're talking about well over a decade ago, much closer to 15 years ago. I think Stewart's a good man. I know a lot of people attacked him in the very beginning because he had not been arrested, and they called him a Fed. And now, you got your evidence, guys. It looks like he's going to prison. And quite frankly, I thought with the climate that we were in and the documented things that Stewart has said, even taken out of context, because, again, what are they going to use? They're going to use talking points, one-liners, two-liners, and often take them out of context to make you sound your worst, that he was going to be found guilty. This is troublesome. As far as I know, I saw no evidence that Stewart Rhodes was part of a seditious conspiracy, that he conspired with anybody to overthrow any government, that he planned any sort of violence whatsoever. But, he's a test case. And for these people, check the box. Got him. Got him. So, without further ado, we're going to go to this clip here. And I want to, again, set this up. So when you see a little bit of a younger, less haggard Jason Bermas, you will indeed understand why. And the reason you're seeing that younger, less haggard Jason Bermas is because he is a younger and less haggard Jason Bermas. Oh, boy. The days, folks, the days. So here it is. This is the Epstein model scam back in the day when, again, it wasn't just Epstein. And Epstein was far from the only one operating. And if you don't think these things are still happening, you're not paying attention. So this is the Claude Hadid story.
Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and I gotta tell you, I didn't really know about this clip that's out there. I had no idea, none, that this was put out 30 plus years ago. 30 plus years ago. Now, a lot of you guys who do follow me on Twitter also follow a guy named Big Fish or Trey Billion. I gotta tell you, he posted this, and this is an expose of when journalism was journalism, when high-profile people like Diane Sawyer, and listen, it wasn't perfect in the 80s by any means, but this is now 31 years old, 1988. Diane Sawyer grilling Claude Hadid, who is in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, and we have an expose where they actually talk about Jean-Luc Brunel as well. Now, I was going to cut this up and, do my thing where I was just going to go bits and pieces. But this is, with commercials, would have been a 20-plus minute piece. And I just have so much to say about not only the fact that the media is failing on so many levels right now to do what this did, okay? And I'm so taken aback by it. I think we're going to play the whole thing. It's going to be a long broadcast. But again, I want people to understand. And shout out to Big Fish on Twitter. Please follow him if you want to see the whole thing without me blabbering my mouth. Let's see. Let's find it over here really quick, and then we'll get to it. But my goodness, the fact this is out in the public realm, that nothing was done for 30 plus years. Let me repeat that. 30 plus years. Okay? Why is it? Oh, man. I'm sorry, guys. I should have tested this out before. Unfortunately, I was having some really weird computer issues. So, all right. Well, there it is right there. There's Big Fish right here. So this is the video we're going to watch. And I guess, oh, man, just all sorts of issues here. We're just going to go for it.
Every week, dozens of young American girls walk off airplanes in Paris and Milan, certain that their faces will be the next to beam from the covers of the fashion magazines. They are girls as young as 15 and 16, recruited by talent scouts or sent by their local modeling agencies, because Europe has more fashion houses and magazines, and it's easier to get that first big break there than in New York.
Or is it designed for those 15 and 16-year-old girls? So again, 1988, we're going to talk about that age range, 15, 16, 17, and people going on camera making huge allegations of this same network. And not only taking advantage of them sexually, first they make them feel helpless by taking advantage of them financially. But we'll get to all that.
The girls are told that they'll have a modeling agency in Europe, which will get them work and be their home away from home. They are girls like Sherry Bolts from Pompano Beach, Florida, a cheerleader who dropped out of high school and used her savings to buy a plane ticket to Europe when she was just 17.
So let's just stop right there. Dropped out of high school, saved up her money, and went to Europe. So this is a girl who doesn't even have a high school education going to Europe.
Local modeling agency helped arrange it and still gets a percentage of her European income. And girls like Megan Douglas, who was a switchboard operator in Washington, D.C., when her photograph won her a spot in a modeling contest. And girls like Kimberly Barker of Nampa, Idaho, whose parents took out a loan to get the money to send her to Europe and to give her a shot at the big time.
All these dreams. Now, again, many of us are willing to go very, very far to try to achieve those dreams. They talk about the statistics then of 1 in 1,000 being able to make a living. Then it was like $100,000 a year, so maybe that'd be about $1 million a year. certainly not being a mega superstar model, just making a living at this.
So the odds are about 1,000 to 1 that a girl will end up a successful model. A model like Debbie Haggerty, who makes about $150,000 a year, and says the top models may do all right, but it's rough for all the others trying to break through.
It's a nasty business, and I don't think these parents have any idea what they're sending their girls into.
What the parents are told by those local modeling agencies and talent scouts is that their daughters have been signed up with European modeling agencies which will take care of everything and become the girls' family abroad.
They're family. They're family. And how young are these girls?
How many girls are on option for this?
So it's something of a shock when the girls discover that a lot of those agencies routinely take as much as 3/4 of the girl's salary. For instance, charging fees on the photographs the girls need for promotion.
So let's stop. I mean, by now, most people know the scam of we're going to do your headshots, your makeup. Here they talk about their rent. And really what they're doing is they're piling these girls in. And then they're not paying into the benefits programs that they're also stealing from them. So financially, these girls, think of it this way. You got a bunch of 15, 16, and 17-year-old girls being shipped off to Europe. They've spent all their money or their parents have taken out loans. They're put into houses with 3 or 4 other girls. And then it's basically, here's the pimp game. Only you really can't pimp out kids. It's called child prostitution and molestation.
And ostensibly deducting taxes and Social Security, even though most of the girls are working illegally without work permits.
We have to check for that. It's very confusing.
Sylvain Charlotte is president of a fledgling models union in Paris. She's helping some of the girls bring lawsuits against the agencies to learn just where all that money goes.
What happens if a girl goes to the agency and says, wait a minute, how much did they never want to explain it.
Why would they? They don't have to explain it. Your chances of making it are 1 in 1,000. They're signing these girls up daily. Do you get it? It's the meat grinder. That's how they've been able to get away with this for so long.
Just say, okay, baby, we have a lot of experience, and we have to pay the tax department, and we have to pay a lot of things, so don't try to understand. So do the agencies really pay Social Security on an illegal way? We don't even know exactly if they pay all the amounts. I'm sure they don't pay for that.
The modeling agencies also own apartments all around Paris, which...
So let me say this. They already own the apartments. They're not paying into the Social Security. So aside from not paying them what they're worth and taking advantage of them that way, later on, they'll be in debt. And they'll be further entrenched into the system where they have to rely on like that big payday or perhaps be compromised in another way.
They rent out to the new girls who come to town. Several girls to an apartment, and each girl paying a lot of rent.
I lived in an apartment that was by no means nice. There was 4 girls living there at the time. We did have our own rooms, but the rooms were like the size of boxes.
Courtney Powell is from Stoneboro, Pennsylvania.
And how much was the rent?
$900 a month.
And you probably $900 a month?
So again, in 1988, they were charging girls $3,600 a month for dorm-style apartments. Again, do you see how this works? You've already been out there. This is your dream. You've got to do what you're told. You see other girls. There's reinforcement everywhere. There's competition everywhere.
$900 a month. That was when the franc was low, and we were each paying that.
Eileen Ford runs the Ford Modeling Agency in New York, one of the largest agencies in the world. She's known for the way she protects her girls.
And let's stop. I think that's awfully fair of them to say, protects her girls. As you'll see here, although they try to make her come off as kind of nice in the beginning, there's no way that she had the level of naivety of what was going on, especially in regards to Jean-Luc Brunel, which will come up later in this piece.
So it gets into Claude Hadid, it gets into Jean-Luc Brunel. Obviously, the clip's audio quality is awful. It's awful. if you want to watch the rest of that uncensored, it goes on for another 20 minutes. Epstein model scam exposed 30 years ago, and nobody listened. Type that into a search engine. You will find it. We may go back to it in a bit. We got Addy coming up in about 5 minutes. But in that 5 minutes, I kind of want to expand upon the Musk thing and really the Twitter thing in general, because Twitter is the place that I often go for any kind of breaking news. For instance, right now, I use Coinbase. I know a lot of people do, especially the wallet. And they're stopping support for, I think, BCH is Bitcoin Cash, ETC, XLM, and then XRP, which is Ripple, which is something that the World Economic Forum has looked at as kind of their model. Where is it? Do I have it up here? Of course, here it is right here. World Economic Forum names XRP as crypto asset most relevant in central bank digital currency space. Now, that's back in 2020. That doesn't necessarily mean that XRP is going to be adopted, but they like that model because it's one in which it's like a meme coin. It's like a Doge. It's just giving them the programmability, the track traceability. It doesn't give them any kind of proof of work, proof of real stake, although they are calling all this stakeholder capitalism, right? So, Twitter is at the zeitgeist. Hey, Jim Carrey leaving Twitter, and he put out this bizarre video. And look, there's some things I like about Jim Carrey. I think in other cases, obviously, we disagree politically. But the video here, I think I'm going to cut off the audio because it's even more bizarre than what you're going to see. Carrey's put out a bunch of different pieces of art over the last several years. And this is with him and his animator friend, I guess, on some kind of lighthouse guy painting. It comes up at the very end. So, Jim, I don't know why you're leaving Twitter. I don't understand why all these people are so scared of any kind of free speech whatsoever, right? Well, why can't we have an open conversation? Since when were conversations hate speech and just like the ugliest thing you could have? I don't get it. Why don't I get it? Tell me, folks. Why don't I get it? I don't. Even when you had literal hateful, bigoted individuals all over the place on the internet, let's say pre-social media, let's say pre even MySpace, on message boards, it's easy. You block that person. You delete them. That's it. You could do it then. You can do it now. You move on. If you don't want to have the conversation that badly, fine. I think anonymity is both important online. You know, if that's what you're going for, if you want an anonymous presence, it's good. But at the same time, when you are talking social media platforms and you have these intentional bad actors, right? Government agents in many cases, part of signature reduction and other programs. And then you could also talk about foreign agents. But then you just have individuals that want to become their own echo chamber, right? And they also post themselves as, how do you say this, reputation management specialists. And what they're doing is they're creating a bunch of sock accounts to sit there and boost their other bullshit and agree with it and have conversations with themselves. And that's also very dangerous when you get to narrative control and what reality is and what's really happening. So I think there has to be a balance there, but the balance doesn't include getting rid of speech you don't like. Or I'm sorry, Jim, being a crybaby about it and being like, I need to leave. I've already seen a massive amount of censorship on subjects I think are inherently important that everybody understand across a multitude of these platforms, right? I see it all the time. And a lot of people are always like, get off the platform, bro. What are you even doing on YouTube? I'm reaching, you know, an extra few thousand people. I'm bringing people over to other platforms. Hopefully I'm reaching people that just kind of tune in because they saw a thumbnail or someone sent them a link, and it brings them into the information. I'm utilizing their own modes of control, their own Trojan horse civilian systems against them. And I want other people to do that as well. We need to do that because we live in this, you know, bizarro world where I'm supposed to believe, and we're all supposed to believe, that this guy I'm about to show you is the most popular president of all time, bar none, most votes ever, and he runs the country. And I'll probably play this clip again later because I have a whole deal I want to do on the Sesame Street partnership with CNN and the same commercials that I'm seeing running now again and again and again and again. Let's see. We got Addy coming up in a second. Hopefully he's not going to have trouble joining us. We sent that over here. Yep. All right. So he will be in a second. But here's Biden crushing it when he's asked about children and when they're going to be able to receive the old, yeah.
That's underway, just like the other question that's illogical. And I've heard you speak about it because you always, I'm not being solicitous, but you're always straight up about what you're doing. And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are, why can't the experts say, we know that this virus is in fact, it's going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved, but permanently approved. Yeah. That's underway, too. I expect that to occur quickly.
Well, that means you...
I mean, and Don Lemon sits there, and he acts like that's normal, and this guy runs the show, and that he can speak, and that he answered the question. We got Addy hitting me up on the end here. He's joining now, so he's going to be coming up. Again, thumbs it up, subscribe, share, redvoicmedia.com/Jason for the second hour on video. The InfoWarrior.podbean.com is where you're going to be able to find the audio stream in live time. Really looking forward to discussing what went down in Brazil with Mr. Ads, with Mr. Addy Ads. And you know, I want the perspective of people on the ground, and I want opposing perspectives. There's a lot of people in the world, a lot of viewpoints, and I think it's important that we continually explore those viewpoints. Oh, boy. I also want to remind everybody that I am a documentary filmmaker, and you can watch all those documentary films for free. Loose Change Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and Shade the Motion Picture. If you still haven't figured out, and it's funny, I've been hosting Making Sense of the Madness over at America Media Periscope for the week, and I had Dr. Aaron Cariotti on. He has a book out. It's called The New Abnormal. Oh, and here's Addy. And he was discussing how a lot of this stuff ramped up after 9/11, and that's one of the reasons that I believe that 9/11 is just as relevant today. And people need to understand that, to understand the bigger picture. I am now joined by my guest. Hopefully I can hear him and he can hear me. It is independent journalist Addy Ads. He is here to tell us about his experience recently in Brazil. First of all, let my audience know who you are, how you got started. I saw you come onto the scene when you were one of the first people on the ground at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, while people were tweeting out things like, where's the mugshot? And is she even on trial? I'm like, well, I happen to know some journalists that are actually there. So, you know, that was a big deal. And where have you expanded to and why you went down to Brazil?
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm up in Wisconsin right now, but where did I start out? I guess it was just podcasting in general and kind of learning about the prison industrial complex, actually. So I kind of came at politics as it's normally known. Yeah, kind of left field or right field, whatever the phrase is. Yeah, through prison culture and learning the corruption in prison, not just here in our prison systems in the United States, but in the United Kingdom as well. And then I learned I learned a name, Jeffrey Epstein, and I just couldn't stop reading about this guy. And then he didn't kill himself, as we all know, on August the 10th. But I've always been interested in true crime. I remember being up late in high school reading about serial killers and dark stuff sometimes, and I didn't realize that you could get paid to learn and investigate these people. So I kind of fell into journalism, and I realized after doing so that we were in really great need of people like you, Jason, and so many others we can name who don't have they're not controlled by the dark money, right? So yeah, Brazil. I started working for the National File about a month ago, and I'm actually up, like I mentioned, the high north of Wisconsin, and it's just starting to get to winter. So I actually have to leave today because my car is so it needs some work. It was,
I've been
it,
there, brother.
yeah. You already know, Jason, and yeah. So it's kind of dangerous to be driving around up in Wisconsin with a car like that. So at least until I get new tires and get it topped up and whatnot. So yeah, we unfortunately just lost Grandpa, so we're up here 2 weekends ago, taking care of that, and then my publisher at the National File asks me if I want to go to Brazil. And I'm like, of course I do. Are you joking? And less than a day later, I was there, and I was set to be there until the 28th, which was 2 days ago today.
Mhm.
And we were only there about 5 days. Yeah, and I can get into why, but I'm not sure if you've covered Brazil recently, Jason, but they're, to shorten it up or summarize a bit and oversimplify, they're basically having their own version of the 2020 election that we had 2 years ago. Highly contested, a conservative populist candidate, and then an establishment, more liberal candidate. So yeah, it's quite a situation. But I gotta say, if I'm listening to someone recently, it's usually you or this guy Anomaly I just found recently too.
Oh yeah,
So
no, I follow Anomaly on Twitter. So let's talk about it
yeah.
broader for the entire audience, because I've only really covered it when I've had Craig Pasta Jardula on, and he went down and he actually observed the elections, at least the first round, before there was a
Mhm.
runoff, and he felt like it was actually a legitimate election, that they had established basically a system with QR codes and biometric security measures, that in real time they were counting these ballots. And whether or not you liked Lulu, he was backed by the cartels and did have support of the poorer populace amongst them. Uh, he felt like it was close enough where the runoff was legitimate with Bolsonaro, and Bolsonaro would have to, I guess, get his act together. Now, on the flip side of that, there did seem to be many demonstrations and protests, but the one that was featured in the media most times was actually an Independence Day celebration that had Bolsonaro supporters in it. So my question to you is, number one, what claims did you go down there to investigate? And number two, what is your sense of what happened there and what the population feels? Because I've also seen many of the videos where there are citizens that do feel like the election was straight up stolen from Bolsonaro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wasn't really sent there to investigate one claim or another, but basically just to report on what was going on. And that was one thing too, is we didn't meet any other international journalists, which was interesting. But I did see that, yeah, well, it's not a fake video, but it's a video from a different time period, as you mentioned. It was like a rally or parade from a couple of years ago in support of Bolsonaro. So that sort of fake news doesn't um, help delineate what's actually going on. And as far as the numbers, yeah, it's I'll just speak on this generally. I mean, another thing that doesn't help things is there's a lot of journalists that aren't journalists. They're actually operatives of some sort, and it's hard to tell who is who sometimes, Jason. I'm sure you know that better than anybody, but just so our audience knows that. Uh, and so you hear things and you're like, that sounds right, but you're never really sure. And then later somebody tells you, oh yeah, they're working on behalf of so and so, or they're sympathizers for this country. Um, and then it also confuses things when they're not actually there and you are. So um, I also didn't have a drone, so I couldn't really have a eagle eye view. And another thing is I was only in Brasilia, which is the capital city. So I wasn't in Sao Paulo, which where Pasta was, and I didn't go to any favelas. I certainly didn't go to the Northeast, which is that's more of like a Lula pocket, if there is one. But yeah, it's tough, Jason. It's so similar to our country because you have one group of people that is so sure it was stolen, and another group that is so sure it's like the most secure election in history. But the military did say they didn't really have enough information to even say one way or another, which I thought was significant. But at the same time, Lula does have um, broader ties to uh, foreign actors, right? And even one Bulgarian communist. And I know I just talked to Pasta yesterday. We were talking for like 2 hours, and we heard each other out. And that's the thing too is I admit um, I didn't really know much about Brazil until I was sent there. So I was like basically thrown into the deep end a little bit. You brought up the trial. It reminded me, and I love the dude. His name is Dave. Um, and he's over at the Epic Times, and they just said go cover the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and like he was covering like a cat cafe before that, and he didn't know a whole lot about Ghislaine Maxwell. So that's an example of getting thrown into the deep end, and I kind of felt like Dave a little bit with this Brazil thing, but I think I caught up a bit on what was going on, but yeah, and that's Pasta brought up some great points. Bolsonaro won on these systems, and he also didn't change them. And I think the smart thing to do would have been, as soon as he got elected this last term, immediately change the system, right, to something more secure, and with a higher degree of trust. So, um,
Well, I have a
yeah,
big problem with any type of system that is electronic, right? We can talk about biometric identification, et cetera, all day, but at the end of the day, there are algorithms that are possibly being run. There are backdoors into software that we don't know about, right? There could be built-in hardware that can be accessed, and there are many levels of exploitation via bad actors and hackers, even if those things are not built in originally. So a system of one person, one vote, identification in person, counting the ballots by
yeah,
hand, and then having somebody check it seems like, the most safe and secure way to have these elections. And we've
yeah,
seen a
yeah.
movement away from that. We've also seen, like you said, Lulu is very sympathetic, if you will, to a lot of the WEF proposals and
hmm
globalism in general. Very much a proponent of what many people call the Great Reset agenda, and they call it in their own words. Obviously, it looks like he's taking power. What kind of upheaval did you see? You discussed the idea of a division, the likes of which we're kind of seeing in this country. I would argue, for me at least, it was easier for me to see, with Biden and Trump, and, one side thinks they're right just by traveling the country, right? The two most
Yeah,
vocal ends
yeah.
in this country, at least that think they're right, are people that live in California and New York. And, being from New York and being around some of these people in the city, I hate to tell you, they're nothing special, folks. You know, they're not more brilliant than you. They're not, I mean, I'm sure, spending time down in New York City. I mean, there's a lot of great people down there, but there's a certain arrogance amongst some of them that like they're better than people and they know more and they're more hooked in because they work
For
in Manhattan
sure.
and said, you know, you
For
get that
sure
feeling.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just in the city. I lived on Long Island this year
Oh
too.
boy, the worst place. That's one of the hell pits on the planet.
Yeah, Jason, it's they're their own breed over there in New York. Not to say there aren't cool New Yorkers, and we know a few, but yeah, it's interesting because uh, I did a lot of traveling too during 2020, and that kind of eye test where you can see a lot more of the country really helps a lot. And I'm with I think I'm with Jason and a lot of other people. It's basically night and day, right? It was like it's like Tom Brady and the Patriots, and then for a metaphor, and like your local high school football team who plays second last.
You're not wrong. Listen, everywhere I went, and
Oh
I
yeah,
went across the
everywhere,
country,
man. It was
everywhere.
crazy.
And that's the thing. You couldn't believe your eyes, right? You couldn't believe it when you saw Trump during the pandemic with thousands of people at these rallies at military bases out in the cold, but then Joe Biden can't draw 200 people, and it's because the majority of people that are with Biden are just too smart to leave their house, right? Like that's the spin on it, and you kind of have had to believe these gaslit narratives. So the
Yeah.
question is, what in your opinion, after spending some time there and doing reporting, and then I want to get into your encounter with what you think is a CIA agent. I haven't heard the entire story yet. I did see your video posted that kind of got you guys out of Brazil. So let's start with what you found. What do you think are the true narratives surrounding this election and these two people? What do you think are some of the false talking points that are kind of being laid out there for people to follow, either rabbit trails to nowhere or to discredit themselves?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, Jason. I would say that posting the videos that are fake only clouds the situation, especially when there are people who are actually going there, like Pasta and myself. But going back to in trying to answer your question, I didn't see many people who were espousing Lula insofar as they had T-shirts or and his color is red. I guess that's the color that the Liberal Party over there in Brazil, and saw a few bumper stickers, but not really that many. And yeah, and then as far as like the mood and what people were saying, as far as going kinetic, there was a couple guys that said they're willing, and I wrote an article on it. They're willing to take this to the physical level, but it's interesting why they said that, because in 2020 I didn't hear anybody say that. I didn't hear anybody say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna spill blood if we need to," which is I find interesting. Why is that? Is it because Brazil is a more violent country and they're just used to seeing violence and partaking in violence, and um, they have to be more violent, so they're willing to be? It's kind of like like Mexico, but there's this YouTube channel and it's analyzes deadly force encounter situations, and the plurality of the videos are from Brazil, and that's something that Bolsonaro, I thought, did a great job insofar as arming the populace, because crime has gone down, and the classic the classic ambush in Brazil was two guys on a moped. I texted my cousin. I was like, if I see two guys on a speed bike, I'm running the other way. But but on the other side, Pasta brought this up too, which I didn't know, is they're using these weapons to um, basically swallow up real estate for big corporations. And where do we see that in our country, right? We basically live in a fascist country. If you're looking at it from the corporations running things, which they largely do, in 2020 kind of showed us that, especially with the way, speaking of Trump, kind of sold our country out to big pharma, and big pharma's influence likewise is very great in Brazil. But yeah, as far as false narratives, um, to answer your question, Jason, it's not just like a pro Bolsonaro rally, and they're on their 31st day in a row now of protests. I was told it's mostly about issues such as censorship, so anti-censorship, which is something we're going through, and in general pro liberty. But then they also were asking for an audit to be done by the military with all the information given, and basically for a recount too. So it's not that they were asking to nullify the election, like, because what's going on in Arizona's it's different. That is like, I'm trying to think of a good cartoon.
Well, for
It's
those that
highway
don't know what's
robbery.
going on in Arizona right now, you actually had an official that said that they were not going to certify the election. And then he was basically threatened with arrest if he did not certify the election. And I believe he did end up certifying it. I'm not sure. I looked at it yesterday, whether or not that went through. But those are the types of things that are happening now in Arizona via the certification.
Yeah. So it's a little more dramatic there, a little further down the line as far as an election steal goes. A lot of evidence, a lot more evidence there for that. Whereas in Brazil, it's more, it smells fishy to many people. But at the same time, Pasta brings up a great point too. I didn't go to the favelas, the ghettos, so I don't know what those people were thinking personally. And those are the poor, right? In Brazil, I was mostly hanging out with working class folks. Folks who kind of grew up with similar to me. Their parents were teachers, or they worked at the school, or kind of middle class folks. In addition, there was also some tribal chiefs there, and some the Javante tribe was there. I got to interview the tribal chief of the Javante tribe. He endorsed Trump and he endorsed Jesus, and yeah. So, but there was a mix there too. But I don't think Pasta mentioned this. I was told this, that most of the elites are also supporting Lula. In addition, so it's kind of interesting, the demographics, the cross sections that are supporting Lula. It seems like a lot of the very poorest people, and then a lot of the very richest people, and then the people more so in the middle class. A lot of them are supporting Bolsonaro. But the other thing too is they had many candidates. I want to say it was like 5 to 7 or 8 candidates, and only about 4 of them got vote amounts that weren't negligible. And the third place candidate is this woman, Simone Tibet, and I actually met her cousin the other week while I was there, which is kind of an interesting story. But
so let's get into the encounter. So you end up leaving early. What happened? How were you approached? What was said, etc.?
yeah. Thanks, Jason. We were working pretty much the whole time we were there, except for Friday, and we got there I think on the 14th, and it was raining every single day. It was like a quagmire, except for Friday. We took some time to. It was actually the lake. And Bolsonaro actually lives on the lake, and we were kind of on the other side of the lake, swimming at the property of our hosts. And later that night, and up until then, we had been covering the demonstrations and conducted a few interviews at the demonstrations with people, either with a translator or with somebody who spoke English. And we did bump into 2 or 3 people that did. So that being said, our translator got cold feet, and I'm sitting on a couple interviews because of it. And you try not to hold it against these people because it's very dangerous, and people are being politically persecuted, and there's fear for that because a journalist got tortured, etc. But Friday night, to answer Jason's question, we had a couple more interviews with some local campaign guys. One was a campaign manager, one was a lawyer, and then it was also going to be the head of the conservative students, basically the students who are conservatives, the head guy. He probably had to go to class or something because we were kind of late, so he was gone by the time we got there. And I was on Lee Stranahan's show, and I think I'm on his show later today. So I was late, and my security guy went ahead, so as not to be impolite and say, "Hey, we're coming. We're just running behind a little bit." And I get there to the table at this bar, and there's some Americans there, and I thought that was surprising. And it's even more surprising that the woman, her name is Kristen Parkhouse, tells me she's an FBI agent, and the man, Miguel Contreras, tells me he's a State Department employee. And immediately, when he said State Department, you know what I was thinking. I just bought a book actually at Goodwill, The Secret History of the CIA. It's like $6 hardcover, so I got a really good steal. Also, a good place to get socks.
I'm a big Goodwill and Salvation Army guy. In fact, I have a book. It's not in here right now, but I just got from there that I'm going to be doing a whole video on. There's
nice.
Great finds there in Salvation Army all the time, my friend.
Sweet. That's awesome, Jason. Yeah, I love those places, especially in the winter. You know, your feet get cold. You gotta double up on socks. And I got a lot of driving to do today, so I'm gonna put you on when I'm driving today. But so I think Contreras, the State Department guy, saw that I was a little nervous because I was like, what's going on here, you know? And I was like, oh, whatever. And he buys me a brew, and he's actually the owner of the bar, and his name, and that's Renato Tibet, the cousin of Simone Tibet, as I mentioned. And he's a young guy. He's 33, and he does the translating, and the interviews go great. And I don't think those guys, the lawyer and the campaign manager, were in on any sort of conspiracy or plan. I think they just wanted to get their message out. And those guys take off. You know, it's getting late. And it was a late night, I got to say. They were at work. They were working, you know, and I'll get to that in a second here. But after the interview, at this point, I'm sitting to the left of Renato Tibet, 33-year-old bar owner. To his right is Kristen Parkhouse, and across the table is Miguel Contreras. And actually, for quite some time, the campaign manager, he was to my left, and we were actually having a good time because I don't speak Portuguese, but I speak Spanish, and he basically understood everything I was saying, and when Contreras and I were speaking Spanish, but he also knew a little bit of English too, so we were able to communicate even though we didn't actually share language, and it was fun. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun hanging out with those guys. And then he takes off, and then Contreras really wants to go to this other bar. It's called Jungle Bar. Not that people need to know what the name of it, but and eventually we relent, and we, being myself and my security guy, travel with Contreras in his car, which is a U.S. government car with diplomatic plates and hence diplomatic immunity. So he brags to us on the way there how we're untouchable. He's such. He does the bafanculo to the Brazilian authorities, right, or the up yours, and it's not that far. It's probably like 10 minutes. And we get there, get out the car, and I leave my backpack in the car, sit down, and not but 5 minutes later, a young, somewhat cute redhead writes on a napkin, "I think you're handsome. Here's my phone number. Shoot me a message," basically. And has one of her friends walk it over to my bodyguard's who's sitting right next to me, and he says no. He's got a girlfriend, and uh, it was only after about 25 to 30 minutes of persuasion attempts by Miguel Contreras and this other young woman, who he later found out was Renato Tibet's girlfriend. And I'll get to her in a sec. And he eventually goes up and says, okay, all these people are wanting me to go chat with her. I'll go be polite. Immediately after he sits down, and it's across the way, across the room, basically, this young brunette girl and her friend come over and sit by me. She tells me her name is Bianca, which was a lie. We later found out her name is Natalie Ribeiro, and she's the girlfriend of Renato Tibet. And she just kind of sat there, and I went to the bathroom and came back, and Renato was sitting in my seat. And I thought, oh, that's kind of weird.
Hold on right there. Hold on right
yeah.
there. Hold it up right there. First of all, I love the detail. I love that you got the names. I love that you did the investigations afterwards. But we're going to go over to Premium right now. So I know all you people on YouTube and Rockfin are going to hate me for this and Rumble, but if you want to listen to the rest of this story, you can do so by going to theinfowarrior.podbean.com right now for free. Or you can join me over at redvoicemedia.com/Jason and hear the rest of this Addy ad story. We're going to sign off one at a time to let my producers take over. Rockfin, we'll see you later. And by the way, everybody, eventually this whole interview will be over there as well. We just posted the entire interview, for instance, with Dan Dix over on Rockfin and YouTube when they are basically not going to be banned by the authoritative sources that be, but it'll always be at Rockfin, and everything 2 weeks later is free over at redvoicemedia.com as well. So